Welcome to Memorable Marketing by MediaGroup. This is episode 16. We have Promit Sanyal, who is the Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Alliance at Moonraft. And Moonraft is an odd company that stands out, and everything they do in terms of marketing is completely different what most other companies are doing. This is the episode where we talk about that. We go deeper into strategy, why it's working and why it's better, and what Promit thinks about marketing in general. It's a really good episode, so stay tuned for this. I hope you enjoy it.
If the client trusts you and believes in the value that you bring in, they will reach out to you when the need comes in.
Promit Sanyal, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
How are you doing today?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So can you tell me, what is Moonraft Innovation Labs?
Yeah, so Moonraft is a design-driven digital experience firm, right? So we basically use design to solve customer problems, right? And we set off with the whole idea of bridging design and technology together, because we realized that there was a gap in the market where you design digital experiences, but what actually goes live is very different. Right. So we said, okay, how do we solve this problem? And that's where Moonraft came about into existence. And we brought design and technology together to drive digital experiences that actually, come out the way they were designed. Right.
Okay. So when you say design and technology, can you give an example of that?
Yes. So, think about your mobile banking app, right? So when you log into your app, you want to complete a transaction. Now, there are some apps which are hideous, right? And you're constantly trying to figure out, okay, what the hell do I do with this app? How do I get my job done? Whereas there are some banks whose banking apps are so smooth that it almost feels intuitive. You almost feel as if the bank is preempting, the next step, right? So that is where design comes into play, right? So that's where you actually, based on the user, based on what task he's planning to accomplish, you basically design experiences which enable him to complete that task.
Now, so design, when you say design, you mean user interface. Is that the correct way of saying it?
It is a combination of user interface and user experience. So in the industry term, you call it UI UX, right? So it's a mix. So the user interface, includes obviously the visual part of it as well. But the user experience is how the customer journey or the flow flows through, right? So tomorrow, if I want to get onto my bank and do a fund transfer, the path that I follow, which is probably the smoothest path to get the operation done, is the entire experience that we try to bring about.
Okay. And you do have clients as well as you have offices in several places around the world. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So we are headquartered in Bangalore, India. That's where we started our operations, and then slowly we started expanding outside of India. So the first country we expanded outside was South Africa, and then we did Sri Lanka. Then we expanded to the US, to Southeast Asia. We're just having talks with certain clients in Australia as well. And slowly we've expanded to Europe, Middle East. So in terms of our offices or the experience studios, as we call it, we basically have the headquarters in Bangalore. We've got one more in Pune in India. We've got another office in Johannesburg in South Africa. We've got a couple of offices in the US, one in the West Coast in Aliso Viejo, California, and one in the East in Atlanta. And we had plans of opening up offices in Singapore and London just before this whole COVID hit. So as usual, the plans got delayed, but we are, now that things are slowly starting to get back to normal, we are again looking at expanding our presence, in these cities.
Can you tell me about some of the clients you're working with?
Yeah. So, technically we are industry agnostic. Okay. So we work with clients across industries. We work with clients across regions. Because if you look at what design does, is we technically look at the user, and then we design experiences for the user, right? So now the problems of a user are, while they're different across industries, they also are in a way similar, right? So you're ultimately trying to figure out the path of least resistance. You're trying to figure out the most intuitive way to get a job done. So which is why it's agnostic. But having said that, we started off initially with some of the early adopters in this whole experience field, right? So for example, one of our first clients in India was an automobile company which launched India's first electric car. So there was the Mahindra E2O, which was launched back, I think, sometime in 2013.
Was it a smart, cheap car that was going to come out? And yeah,
it was similar to that. Yes, and it was India's first electric car, and we actually designed the telematic app for that car. So it was a really interesting time because we had the car inside our office the entire time, think about. I mean, there were two challenges, right? Firstly, in those days, not many people understood what electric cars were, right? So you were actually trying to, obviously educate them about electric cars, the benefits of electric cars. There is obviously a lot of anxiety as to, I mean, the term is range anxiety, right? So how far can my car go with this amount of battery? Then there's also, this whole concept of, okay, it's a totally new thing. How do I trust this whole brand? How do I trust the car? And what is that unique thing which comes in? So we had to factor all of that when we designed the telematic application, right? And this was, again, almost like 7-8 years back or even more. I mean, these days it's very normal that, you have a car and you flip out your phone and you can actually maybe switch on the heater from your phone, or you can turn on the car. But back then, those were some of the things that we had to bring in. Another very interesting thing that we found out when we were doing, so typically the process how we do is we do a bit of user research to figure out what the user is going through, what are his problems. We try and be like a fly in the wall to see, how is he using the. So one of the things during user research we found was that this car was, most probably would be the second car of a house, right? And in India. And the second car of the house was typically being used for things like, dropping off your kids to school or picking them up from school or going for, grocery shopping and stuff like that, right? Which actually meant that at any point of time, one hand of the user is occupied with some sort of a bag, right? With either the school bag or the shopping kit. So the design of the app had to be such that it could be used with just one hand, right? So we actually came up with like a dial-based interface. So you just have, you take your phone and you can just rotate to access the different features, right? So those kind of inputs come in from user research, and then you basically put that into the whole experience. So it started with that, and that obviously was a great success for us, and then slowly we expanded to we had a lot of banking clients, because banks, and what we've seen is typically consumer facing industries are ones which require or are early adopters to that experience, or investors in experience, right? So banks were actually one of the earlier investors there, adopters there. And then, but I mean, now we have clients across, travel and hospitality. We do see manufacturing industry, we see auto industries, we've got retail, healthcare, utilities companies, and so it's across the board now.
And so, how many people are you working at Moonraft?
Right now we are close to about 350 plus.
Wow, so that's well done. Obviously, you're sitting in India. I know you have clients in South Africa. I know you have clients in Europe and in America. How do you, as a marketing officer, how do you attract these clients? How do you get in and know when they're ready to go and find this solution? How do you target them, and where do you go and target them? And how do you target them? And how are they with you guys based maybe not in Europe? Is that why you're opening offices? Or there's a lot of questions within that question, but I hope you can answer that.
No, so interesting question. So, frankly, that is actually one of the interesting challenges that we have to work with all the time, right? So, because if you see, there are multiple things to consider when we are looking at different geographies. One is obviously the culture in every place is extremely different, right? And because we are designing experiences for the human, right? Culture plays an extremely important part. The other thing what also comes in is, terms of what is the adoption of generally or the awareness of design in that country or, or that region, right? So, for example, the adoption of, say, experience or the understanding of, digital experience in, say, an African region would be very different to, say, Australia or US, right? Similarly, the other thing we have to consider is what is Moonraft's brand recall in those regions, right? So, for example, in India, Moonraft has a relatively good brand recall, whereas in some of the new markets we are entering, obviously it's a different ballgame because you have to establish the brand as new. So we typically look at two ways of addressing that, right? So one is obviously there is an element of category marketing that we have to do, right? So where we are not just talking about design, Moonraft, but we're talking about what design is, how design can be a differentiator for businesses, right? It's becoming easier day by day because people are getting more and more exposed to different apps, apps like Uber or the delivery apps, or banking apps even these days are really good. So it's becoming easier, but still people need to figure out, what is that value add that design brings in. So there's a lot of education that we have to do, and that typically we do through, a lot of content creation, right? So we create content around, blogs or videos, or we go and speak at events. We also do things like, we have, if you see, most of our leaders are actually thought leaders in their respective fields. So they do a lot of work in their own personal individual capacities as well. We actually, the one thing which definitely happens is that we also try and do, we modify our engagement model a little bit. So in the sense, whenever we are we are in a discussion with a client before engaging into a project, we do things like we do a lot of point of views or proof of concepts, right? Because it's that tangible thing which the client wants to see. It's only once they see that experience, that clickable experience, or how the flow will work. It's only when they see that is when they realize that, okay, this is something which needs to be invested in, and it, there's a differentiator, right? So category marketing definitely is one. In terms of brand marketing, we definitely, there are we focus a lot on inbound marketing rather, and maybe. So majority is inbound marketing, minority is outbound marketing, right? So again, inbound marketing, lot of content, a lot of creating videos, creating contents, creating thought leadership papers, articles, interviews, stuff like that, right? One thing which we definitely have to maintain in this whole thing is that because we are a design brand, everything that we create and everything that goes out to the customer has to be of a certain quality, right? And that includes all the touch points that the customer has with the brand. Like even when he speaks to a salesperson, or he sees us on a website or any article, or even if there's an article about Moonraft at a particular publication, that publication has to be of a certain positioning for us to be a part of it, right? It's like entering a Louis Vuitton shop, right? While the product is awesome, everything around it, the visual merchandise, the salesperson, everything is also of a premium quality. So that's what we try and focus on. Definitely, once that initial interaction happens, then we start getting into, lead nurturing or ABM campaigns and, stuff like that to basically move the needle along.
So a majority of it comes from inbounds, you said, right? So you're putting a lot of papers out of there, so some talk papers, as you said. You have some content, you have some videos, so people come to your website. Do they sign up with an email address? Do they sign up to download a white paper? How do you get this inbound, just from a technical point of view?
So again, it's a mix of multiple things. Typically, what we sort of believe is that it's we try and give more content free or as ungated content, because we feel that there is a and there's we've seen data as well that there is a lot of hesitancy when people come and fill in data. Okay. So unless you keep that to the minimum, so again, it's again context based. So for example, if tomorrow there's a very specific white paper we've released and it's and we want people downloading it, we'll put it behind a gated content, right? But whereas if there is something which is slightly more mass or slightly more I think available to all, we keep it free for download, but we always give easy options to reach us, right? And it could just be like if you click, a pre-filled email comes up. So some of the traditional ways of actually reaching out on digital actually works extremely well for us.
So your philosophy is put a lot of value out there. That's what I'm hearing you saying. So a lot of stuff that's free, and then so some of the most valuable content, you do need to require an email address or fill out a form in order to download that. But you give away a lot of stuff for free to create the value and to create trust with what you guys are doing. Is that correctly understood?
That is correct. Because I mean, as a brand, also we believe in being a no fluff brand which provides value to the client, right? And we also believe that if the client trusts you and believes in the value that you bring in, they will reach out to you when the need comes in, right? So there's that the BANT framework, right? So the budget authority need. So so if what we've seen over the years is that you might have the best content, you might have the best offer on the table, right? And the customer might be totally floored, but they'll still not reach out to you, and you'll keep wondering as to why aren't they reaching out to me, right?
It's called the death of the salesman. Yes, exactly.
Seriously, it's and it used to eat us up all the time, and then through our conversations with clients, we realize that it's all these four factors of the BANT framework need to come in together for them to actually start the conversation, right? So our job is there. Okay, keep producing quality content, keep being visible out there, and just ensure that your brand recall is high, right? So when that need arises, automatically they will reach out to you. And simple things we like in terms of the inbound which comes in, it's so much higher than the outbound in terms of the value of the discussions or how hot the opportunity is, right? So when the customer is actually reaching out to you, half your job is done. The next job is basically proving value to the customer. And a very small things we've actually. So one of the I'm a big believer of behavioral economics. Okay, so I really feel that human behavior has certain traits which are extremely irrational, but they cause a huge impact in how they behave, right? So or how and as a brand, it's very important to understand those things. So there's a very interesting book called Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, which I suggest all marketers listen to or read, because I think one of the key things that he brings about there is, so the difference between economics and behavioral economics is that, economics typically comes with the angle that, okay, human beings are rational people, right? Whereas behavioral economics says, no, human beings are irrational. And, and that's where the whole theory starts. So, one of the things that we had done was, if you go to our website, in our contact page, you will find the phone numbers and the email addresses there. It is really amazing how many inbound leads actually come to us just through the phone, right? And it was interesting. I was listening to a podcast of Rory Sutherland where I realized that he mentions the same thing, that people go to a website, and a lot of people don't want to email. They just want to just pick up the phone and call you. But if they go to the website and don't see a phone number, they basically go they don't know what to do, and that's another barrier, right? So that is something which has worked great for us, and we actually get phone calls coming in. Another interesting thing that we've tried, or leveraging behavioral economics, is that you, in terms of the events and conferences we participate in, we try and be in events which are probably not events around design or customer experience, right? So for example, one of the biggest deals of 2019, before COVID, or 2019, that we got was from a fintech conference that we went to. Right now, technically, that fintech conference just focuses on vendors, but us being a UX company, the fintech conference led us to the largest, to us working with one of the largest banks in the Southeast Asia, right? And this is similar to what. So, for example, Rolls-Royce, they actually tie up. They don't. If you see that, a lot of their sales come from not automobile events, but it comes from yacht events, right? So what that does is that when you have buyers who go to buy a yacht, your price points and exactly, right? So you're already anchored at the level of a yacht in terms of the experience and the price, and then you come back and say, oh, Rolls-Royce, that looks affordable. Might as well skip the yacht for now, buy a Rolls-Royce, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so some of these these small behavioral tricks, I feel goes a long way in converting clients and bringing clients in.
I see a pattern here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pramrit, is that you were going to a space where you said there was not a lot of competition. You want to be different. You are doing inbound marketing by giving a lot of value out. You go to conferences you're not supposed to be at. So you are always the odd man out. You're always sticking out. You're always different. You're not in the same fields as the other, I guess, competitors where everyone else is fishing. So you're fishing in your own point, which is kind of smart from a philosophical point of view, from a marketing point of view. I like that. Because the journey of a potential client, they might be ready now, or they might get the idea, but until they have the idea, go through the budget and approval of the boards and money down the line, it can take a long time, or it can go very quick. But you are there when they're ready. You just got to keep feeding them so that they keep staying focused on you. I really like that.
No, absolutely. I mean, think of it this way: that in terms of think of the number of promotional emails you get every day, right?
Yes.
And how many actually interest you enough to call back. Yes, there would be certain emails which are obviously beautifully crafted, and it really makes a lot of sense. But in general, there's just so much content and clutter out there. How do you break away from it, right? And these are the kind of ways that you actually have to stand out, that you need to do something which the clients remember, right? So one of the things that we infamously do is also that there are times when we actually say no to the client, right? So for example, there are people, or there are organizations which come to us and say, can you conduct a 2-day design thinking workshop for us, right? Now, and we say no, right? Now, any design firm would typically take that up in a jiffy, right? Because 2 days work, you get paid well. But our thought process is, see, design thinking is an evolved and complex field, right? It's like saying that give me a 2-day workshop in marketing, and I want to be an expert in marketing, right? That doesn't work. So we basically say that no, we're not doing that. But what we can do is we can identify maybe one of the problems that you're facing in your organization, right? And let's do maybe a project on that, or maybe a very small, maybe 2-week, 3-week project to address that problem, and your team members can be a part of it, right? So then they are actually in a live project, seeing how a design company works,
hands-on.
Exactly. So you're basically learning on the job, and then you can take it to a broader audience. But coming out and saying that we've got doing a 2-day training session for a 5,000 member company, and then the next day coming out and saying we've got 5,000 design thinkers. That just like blows my mind, right? So yeah, I mean, we try, and it's that whole anti-positioning thing, I think, which works really well.
That's good. Just want to go back to the content a little bit. Let me ask you a couple of questions about that. So how much content do you do per week or per monthly basis, and how many people is involved in creating this content?
Mm-hmm. So we initially used to create a lot of content, right? We would try doing at least like a blog a week, or maybe a blog every 10 days, and try and get out videos maybe every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or explainer videos, or social anyways is more or less on a much more frequent basis, because the shelf life of social content is lesser. But I think thought leadership articles and all, we used to do it much more frequently earlier. But then when we looked at the data of the consumption, the engagement, and we realized that there was only a certain type of content which was really doing well, and which was the content which was written by the tech folks, or the marketing or the design folks, right? I mean, because we are mainly in the design and tech space, right? The content written by anyone else, we've tried agencies before, we've tried marketers. We've had a large team of content creating marketers, and we realized that content scores lesser than what obviously the SME writing does. So now what we've done is we've actually kept it to a slightly lesser frequency in terms of thought leadership content. We've got a team of content marketers who work with the SMEs, with the subject matter experts, to produce that content. Frequency is lesser, but the meat is more, right? So we prefer long form content, because again, it's I think right now, if you look at the content consumption across the world, content consumption patterns, it's just like anything else, it's just become extremes, right? So you have one group which just does the snackable content piece, right? Which just, wants short content which they can quickly scroll through. Then you have the other group which, likes reading long form, in-depth content, right? So, that's why you see people like Medium, platforms like Medium doing so well, because you have long form content coming in, or even if you see the rise of Substack as a newsletter company, right? I mean, you have really long form newsletters coming in, which are basically educating people more to take informed decisions, and that's the path we've taken, right? So you'll see a lot of long form content coming in, and our content team drives that.
What do you classify as long form content? How long is that? How many pages are we talking about? Are we talking about words, or
I would say it would be anything above maybe 600, 700 words.
Okay, so that's long form. All right, okay. All this content you create, are you using SEO? Are you using any search engine optimization, or what's your strategy or philosophy on that?
Yes, we do use SEO. SEO is a strong part of it, because, as I mentioned, right, that there is inbound is a very strong part of our marketing strategy, right? So SEO by default becomes extremely important. So yeah. So we focus both on page and off page SEO. If you look at the kind of keyword research that we do, the kind of the content we create has to be aligned to the keywords. We used to face a problem earlier where we basically had again, like it's basically striking that balance between design and efficiency, I feel, right? So earlier what used to happen was that we would focus too much on design, so there would be a lot of really fancy interactions and page loads, and we had single page applications, and so which made it slightly more difficult for us to get the optimized SEO in place. But we revamped that. We figured out ways to work around it so that we strike the right balance between SEO and experience, right? Because there are times when, if you look at it, you want the page to load the fastest, right? and that really impacts, really uplifts your SEO scores, right? But the flip side is, when you're a design company, you want certain interactions, certain delays to be part of the scroll that you do, or the picture image loading.
I went to a site today, so yes, I know about that. It goes black, then it goes white, and the stories come slowly across. I'm like, how can I speed this up? But I had to sit and wait to go through the case studies. Yes,
yeah. So we basically, that's this fine balance that we always, are fighting to strike. And yeah, I mean, it's getting improved day by day. I think, we've got this constant evolution of, I would say, the SEO strategy for us, and how do we get the right balance. But SEO is extremely important for us, even in terms of
And you see the long-term effects. Of course, it doesn't happen right away, but over time you get bigger and bigger market share. So yeah, that's working for you. Okay, that's really
absolutely good. Like even to give you an example, for the South African region, we actually started doing SEO focusing on the region a year back, and now on an average we actually get, I think almost 55% more visitors on our website. We're getting much more inbound leads coming in, and it's just focusing on just SEO and inbound. And because it's, again, I think we are in a bit of a niche space, because design is not still so prevalent in South Africa, right? So it, when people are looking for design companies and you're there and your SEO is up to the mark, next moment, you have people interested, right? So
when people look into the Google, and boop, there you are, and that's how you get the traffic. Oh, it makes absolutely. How do you? We talked earlier about, if I may go back a little bit. So you said you had done tests earlier where you try to say, okay, if it's written by the marketing people, no one reads it. But if it's written about our designers, which is thought process, think leadership, as you talked about, they're much better. How do you, as from a CMO point, are you using any special tools to measure that? What are you using, and how do you measure it?
To be very honest, we've basically got Google Analytics on our website, and that's pretty much what we use. But we also have a Medium channel. So on the Medium channel as well, you get reports coming in. But it's very I think in terms of analytics, it's mainly Google Analytics which we use to figure it out.
You said before that on your website you want SEO is very focused on a fast loading website, right? That's what we tell all our clients. You got to have a very fast. But you said we still got to have the design elements in there, and I talked about the black bar. Where is the bridge between the data-driven decision and the art decision? And it seems to be a theme that's coming up in the last couple of episodes of this podcast. It's like we have all this data, we have all this knowledge of how it's happening, but then we also got the feelings, the emotions, the art, the design, the innovation, the bridge there. How do you define that? Where do you make the right choice? If you understand the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and if you ask me, I think that's the biggest challenge that we face. That how do you balance this whole subjectivity versus data, right? I mean, in the sense, if you look at the design or the interactions which come in, there's a lot of subjective element to it, right? And there's this intangible perception-led thing which is extremely prevalent there, right? So to be very honest, I don't think anyone has solved it, right? And you just try and continuously evolve and try and make it more experiential. But at the end of the day, I think you have to figure out that what is the core that you're working towards, right? So I mean, to give you an example, if you taking the example of, say, a Porsche 911 car, right? Now, if someone comes and says that I want the car to be silent and the car to be really not make any noise at all, it takes away from the essence of the sound of that engine that comes once you turn on the Porsche, right? And it's an intangible benefit that hits the user, which you can't measure, right? It's very difficult to measure. So similarly, I think taking a leaf out of that book, if you look at the websites, right, and the experience has to strike that balance between the intangible that it provides versus obviously efficiency. And I strongly believe that efficiency can, improving efficiency is an iterative process, right? So you basically put something out, you try and see what works, what doesn't work, how do we improve something. So we do a lot of testing on these, the content or the website experiences, right? So one day maybe we'll try a lazy loading experience versus one day we'll write a progressive. So those kind of things we keep trying and see what works best for us and what is improving the overall performance. But some of the things are pretty sacrosanct, like, we need certain interactions on our website. So I don't know if you've seen on our website, when you scroll down, the M actually, or the burger menu dot on the right actually turns to become the M logo, right? The Moonraft icon logo.
I noticed that. I noticed also at one point I was scrolling, suddenly it said Ruby Tuesday. And I was like, what is that? And I clicked on it and it sent me to a Rolling Stones concert where they were playing a love song on Ruby Tuesday. And it's just like, it was odd because you send me away from your own website because it was just a little thing. It was just there, but I clicked on it. It was just a different experience, I guess. Yeah. And I guess that's what you do. You guys are standing out. You are different in what you do. Can I ask some personal questions? So how long have you been how long have you been at Moonraft? How long have you been CMO at Moonraft?
So I joined Moonraft sometime in 2015, 16, when Moonraft was a 35-member company, right? So I basically there was always somehow this sort of a bug that I wanted to be a part of the startup ecosystem, right? And I wanted to. I'd worked with large companies before, and while they bring in certain, it's a totally different ballgame, right? So large companies teach you how process is managed, how scale is managed, but what I felt was that I was getting compartmentalized into a very specific role, right? Whereas I wanted to then come to the startup ecosystem because I was like, okay, it has to be more than what just doing a very particular thing. Which is why, through one of my colleagues, I joined Moonraft. And yeah, I think since then I've been the marketing person and building the Moonraft brand story and, building a team under me and trying to see how do we grow the company. Obviously, till now, the journey from 35 to 350 plus has been great. And thankfully, we are in a space where digital is now absolutely. It's unavoidable, right? So everyone has to be on digital, and we are seeing people waking up to that more and more frequently. So that's a great space to be in, and so basically, I look after marketing and alliances, right? Because like when I said design and technology. If you look at the whole experience angle, technology is an extremely important part of this whole process, right? So how do you make it easier for companies also to actually publish content, create content? Like, you have digital experience platforms coming in, you have, maybe the right kind of search experience. So, do you have AI-driven search partners there? So building that whole ecosystem of partners as well as making that brand of Moonraft stand out is what I've been focusing on.
You mentioned it earlier before, and you said that's one of my challenges. But what other challenges are you facing right now? What concerns? What keeps you up at night, if anything keeps you up at night? What are you thinking about that you want to solve from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge is still getting to the next level of growth, right? So getting to the next level of growth while keeping the company ethos and the culture and the positioning intact is the biggest challenge, right? So if you look at it, the growth from, say, a 35 people team to a 350 member team has been smooth, but now suddenly there's a shift in the entire operations, the process, the kind you position, the kind of scale we are operating in, right? So when I joined Moonraft, we were only in India and South Africa. Now we are in India, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Singapore, Philippines, Australia, US, UK. So it's just grown exponentially, right? So how do you set up a brand for that level of success while retaining the right mix of the kind of agility that we have right now as a startup, right? So you hear all the large companies saying that we are a startup at heart, and frankly, I don't think anybody is. All those companies are, because it's extremely tough, right? It's extremely tough to scale and ensure that the culture is transmitted. It has to be top down for sure, and it you have to look at the brand not just from a myopic angle, but the brand has to be looked at from even things like hiring, right? Even when you're hiring technical people or designers, right? You have to ensure that they align with your company culture, they align with your ethos, right? It needs to go into even how you communicate your HR processes, what kind of work-life balance. And suddenly when you see a lot of growth coming, there is always this, you always have this feeling that, okay, can we compromise growth? Can we, we might need to compromise some of the processes to ensure that growth comes in. So keeping that balance between growth and ensuring that culture stays, I think, is something which keeps me up at night, I would say. And marketing and marketers play an extremely important role in that, right? Even things like what kind of mail goes out when someone applies to your company, right? Even something like that is extremely important in saying that, okay, this is the company you're planning to join and this is who we are, right? So taking the processes, putting in processes firstly, and then ensuring that those processes can scale towards the next level is what I think is the biggest challenge that we face right now.
Without losing the human connection. What is the 5-year and 10-year vision for you? Where do you see yourself and Moonraft going in 5 or 10 years? Are we 3,500 people? Are we 35,000? Or what's the vision from where you sit?
Yeah, so I think we definitely see. We are seeing a lot of growth happening already, right? And touch wood, we see the growth continuing for the next 5 years. Ideally, where we would want to be is, we would still like to maintain that positioning that, okay, we are an agency that has no BS, but gets shit done, right? And how do you ensure even after 5 years, when you are present in multiple localities, you still encapsulate that culture? But I think the bigger thing is also that how can we be a global company and yet be a local company? And I know it's a sort of a cliched statement that that every MNC says that, okay, we are local and global and local and stuff like that. But I think our aim is that tomorrow or maybe 5 years later, our office in, say, Johannesburg, South Africa, will be looked at as if it's a local South African company, right?
Got it.
Or similarly, if we have a studio in Australia, again, in Australia, the culture is so different, right? The communication is so different. You would know you would know about it. So how do we actually, maybe 5 years later, how do we build a studio there, obviously with local talent, with local culture, and be the best locally, right? I think that's where we see maybe 5 years down the line being a company which does that.
What advice would you give other CMOs out there? Obviously, you are coming completely left field. I love what you're saying about the inbound marketing. I love about the content creation. Many of the other episodes we've done, this is episode 16, has not been about inbound marketing. It's been more about data-driven and trying to optimize SEO and Facebook ads and stuff like that. But what's your advice would you give other CMOs out there from your perspective?
So I think the biggest thing is that, I think one needs to look inwards, right? You basically, like the very famous thing of know thyself, right? So you basically have to understand what works for you and what doesn't work for you, right? I think that's the biggest thing. So, depending on there are multiple factors which come in, like what stage of growth your company is in, what field of work you're in, what region you're in. You need to figure out what works for you best. But having said that, one of the common things which I see happening these days, and a lot of new marketers and people who are entering the field don't go in depth into, one, obviously understanding who they are, but also understanding what the technology does, right? So tomorrow, if someone wants to really go into programmatic advertising, right, you really need to understand how that works, or get someone who understands how that works, right? But even when you get someone who understands how that works, you should be in a position to actually know that, okay, these are the right metrics I'm measuring, which work for my brand. And trust me, every brand is different, right? Because I see a lot of marketers, thinking that, okay, I just do marketing, and I will get agencies to do some of this deep stuff for me, or if I'm doing marketing, maybe sales is not my job. I think one of the things I've learned working in a startup is that you have to get shit done, right? And in order to get things done, if you tomorrow have to wear the hat of an HR personnel, you'll have to do that, right? And I think that is the biggest advice I would give, that don't put blinkers on, be myopic, but try and broaden that horizon and see what works for you. Like don't blindly jump into there are a lot of you suddenly see a trending hashtag, and you jump onto the whole movement, and I'm not saying the movements are bad, but I'm saying that jump into that movement only if you truly believe in it, because the consumer these days, they can see through you, right? So if tomorrow you say, I'm the most sustainable brand out there, and I'm batting for sustainability, whereas you are taking a gas guzzling car to work. I mean, it doesn't work, right? So, and I'm not saying what's right, what's wrong. I'm just saying that you just need to know what you believe in and work on that, right? So I think that's my main advice to marketers.
That's really good. Thank you. Promit, it has been absolutely a pleasure talking to you. I think what you're doing is amazing. I love the whole inbound thing. I love that you're creating content. You're getting people time to your potential clients, giving time to understand. They come to you. It's much easier to sell to people when they come to you instead of you chasing people like every other agency or every other company out there. I like your philosophy. So I just want to thank you for sharing that with you for us on the podcast, and thank you for being on here.
Thank you, Thomas. It's been an absolute pleasure, and love talking to you on this discussion. And all the best.
If you've listened to Memorable Marketing by MediaGroup before, either as a podcast or watched it on YouTube, then at the end of it, I bring in Sane. Sane is our producer who's sitting behind the scenes. He's making sure that we sound good, maybe not so smart, but not sounding smarter, but sounding good. And he's also making sure that we somewhat not look good, but at least the video looks good. So, Sane, what do you think about this episode?
This was a very interesting approach to branding, I think, Promit has.
Yeah.
The whole anti-positioning stuff, and I think that comes from the opportunity that Moonraft has, because they have such a distinct and thorough brand.
Yeah.
Like they know who they are and what they're putting out, and so like that's saying no to certain clients and going like, well, we're not going to do that, but we can do this, something else. And it's a very interesting way to approach a brand. And he referred to it right at the end as well, like even when people are applying to work with them, how the brand of what they send out, what image that gives them as well.
Yeah.
I think that is a really solid way to approach branding a company, because it is thorough. So you can't be caught out in a lie, because it is exactly who you are at the time.
Yeah. I like that. I also really like the fact that he's going inbound, that they found out there was a field no one was in. They were trying to get in there. They market completely different than everyone else. They're using inbound marketing, using content. Lots of people using content, but giving long articles. The really long articles are the ones that convert, not just this short marketing message with a smart, fancy logo or smart, fancy
I'm
motto.
so glad that this has come up, because that's the content that I like. I like the long form.
And there seems to be
what did he call them? The subject matter experts, the SMEs.
Yeah. So think leaders, I think he called them. So it seems to be coming up a theme in the last couple of podcasts. Is like there's this whole data-driven world we live in now, where we can measure anything, almost everything what the potential users are doing, and we are aiming for that, and we're trying so hard to convert them. And then there's this opposite camp where it's all about art, human feelings, emotions, and it's all about creating an environment where you give a lot of value away for free, a lot of value, and then when people are ready, that's when they come and connect with you. And I really like that approach.
Yeah.
And
I think Pramit put it really succinctly when he said it's striking a balance between design and efficiency.
Yeah.
Obviously, the data is telling you exactly what the most efficient way is, but design is how you get that intangible result that can't be quantified yet in data. So I think that's a really interesting way of approaching what has come up in the last few episodes.
Yeah. And I think that you have to be a very brave CMO to go in and say, stop. We're going to stop all the ads. We're going to stop all the advertising. We're going to stop and go a complete different direction and opposite what everyone else is doing. And you got to be brave and know what you're doing in order to not only convince yourself, but convince everyone else that this is the right patch to do. But it seems to be working for them, going from 35 people to 350 and now have offices around the world and coming from India. And going global but still local. That's impressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
It was a great episode to listen to.
It was. I really enjoyed it. Zane, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
Likewise.
Thank you. Talk to you next episode.